Let me know when we're ready, Jerry. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to I believe it's the 10th annual Fairfield Board of Finance Public Budget Forum. This is our opportunity to hear from you, as opposed to you listening to us talk. Rules of the road as to this is that there's no questions to be asked, right? We're not here to answer questions. We're here to actually hear your comments about the town of Fairfield's proposed budget. Please keep your comments to about 2 minutes in length and be creative. Don't ask the same or don't make the same statement that maybe someone else has already made. Be original in your commentary and your questions. We do want to hear from citizens of the town of Fairfield. This is for our citizens, not for other towns and municipalities. I wish I could say, one time getting up here, that this was an easy budget year and that everyone was going to walk out of the room happy and let's be done in 20 minutes. But as in prior years, it's never an easy budget year, particularly with what's going on at the state level. I'm not going to bother to reiterate what we talked about last year. I believe if you're here, you're paying close attention to what's happening financially, not just in the town, but also in the state. And we still continue to have issues, and there's still risk in this budget related to the amounts that we can expect to receive from the state of Connecticut. And that risk is not going to abate for many years. And that's something that ourselves and the administration and the rest of the town bodies are going to have to deal with. In this budget, there are some cutbacks on services, particularly in areas such as paving and some of the line items throughout the budget in all the departments around town. This is not what I would call a move forward budget in terms of it's not moving forward with additional services for townspeople. This is trying to maintain as best we can given the financial uncertainty that is out there. There's no easy answers to this budget problem, and not everyone will be happy at the end of this. It's challenging times, and we all know that, and we're all in this together, and all of us are trying to make the best decisions possible for the town as we move forward, and that includes my colleagues from each side of the aisle and our colleagues on other town boards and commissions. I want to start by introducing my colleagues. To my far left is Mr. Jim Walsh, and then Ms. Liz Zesma, Mr. Chris DeWitt, Mr. Jim Brown, our Vice Chairman, Mr. David Becker, Ms. Sheila Marmion, and Mr. John Matola. Mrs. Mary LeClaire is a CPA, and this is her busiest time of year. So while she makes time to be able to attend our meetings each evening and is heavily engaged, she obviously has trouble getting here on a Saturday when she's working, so she sends her regrets. With that in mind, does any of my colleagues have anything that they would like to add? And if not, we'll kick it off. I'd ask if you'd come up to the mic one at a time, state your name, your address. We do have a sign-in sheet when we would appreciate you putting that up. And then we'll move forward. And again, now, if any of my colleagues wants to make a comment to some statement that is made, particularly if there's some type of factual disagreement, they may respond, but it's not incumbent upon them. We will make statements at the end of the meeting, I would think. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
So, is this on? No. No, it is not. All right.
After Phil talks, you can put it on.
And before Jim comes, she can turn it off. That'll be too good for me. While you're fixing this, I'll talk to save time. I think you can hear me. Yes, I'm here to say 10,000 students, 1,400 staff are depending upon your approving the superintendent's and board's unanimously recommended budget for the Board of Education. But in 1990, when I came to Connecticut, chose Fairfield as a place to raise my family, I did so because of the beaches. I did so because we are host to Fairfield University. because when my son came home from school and found a burglar in the house, our police department was there in a minute. We have an excellent fire department, an excellent public works department, a senior citizen center, a library that serves both youth and seniors. It is the combination of services that Fairfield offers its citizens that make us the valuable town that people want to move to. And so I think at the end of the day, after you ask all of your questions, whether it's cross-examining or grilling or third degree or tough questions of all of the department heads, it strikes me that your job is to say, can this town afford a 2.5% increase in order to preserve and maintain the quality of services that our citizens expect and deserve? I hope 9 of you say yes. At the very least, I hope 5 of you say yes. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Mr. Dwyer, can you sign in, please?
Yep, right. Sorry.
No problem.
Good morning and happy spring. Thanks again for this opportunity and for the enormous number of hours all of you devote to this effort on the Board of Finance, away from your families, away from your careers, and away from other personal interests. So we should all be very grateful for the time that these people and others who serve our town in a voluntary capacity and what they do for us. So it may be spring, but monstrous storm clouds are gathering over Connecticut, to which Chairman Flynn alluded just a moment ago. Connecticut faces a growing and deepening financial crisis that threatens Fairfield's ability to continue to prosper in the future, the effects of which will include reductions in municipal aid, as we have already seen, but more to come, higher taxes in one form or another, perhaps through the transfer of certain costs that the state has been paying that they will expect us now to pay, weak economic and job growth, high commercial vacancy rates that prevent us from building our commercial tax base, and an exodus of resourceful companies and people, all of which are eroding our local and the state's tax base. And meanwhile, as you know, there are changes in federal tax law that limit the deductibility of state and local taxes so that the after-tax cost of state and local government is rising significantly. So I want to say thanks to the First Selectman and to the Chief Fiscal Officer and to all of the department heads on the town side for controlling costs as well as they have. If their budget is approved as proposed, spending on the town side will rise 1.2% and will be up only 3% over the last 5 years, which I think is commendable. Unfortunately, town spending is only 1/3 of our total spending. And the Board of Education does not seem to understand, in the same way that the town does, the challenges and threats that Fairfield faces. If approved, their budget for the coming year will be up 3.1%, and over the last 5 years, their spending will be up 15%, and with enrollments down 4% over that period, spending per pupil will be up 20% over the last 5 years. So I urge the board, as I do every year, to make the tough choices required to keep any increase in our tax rate at or below the current 1.5 to 2% rate of inflation, and to continue to seek structural changes that will permanently lower the cost of delivering our public services. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name's Gordon McKenzie. I live at 11 Palmer Bridge here in Fairfield. When looking at the Board of Education's proposed budget, we as citizens and you as the Board of Finance have to ask ourselves whether or not this is an affordable proposal. If we look at many of the key aspects in our town's financial environment over the past few years, there are many downward trends going on. For example, the value of our grand list of Fairfield properties going down, which means homeowners' property taxes must rise to pay the bills. Our school population continues to go down. Amount of Connecticut state income tax revenues that Hartford allocates to our town, which support property tax relief, such as education cost sharing, compensation for relief from the fact that nonprofits do not pay property tax, and reduce funding of programs for our seniors, all down. And these will continue to go down in the years ahead because of the terrible financial shape our state is in. These are just a few of the factors that will, on their own, now and in the future, continue to drive our property taxes up particularly hurting seniors on relatively fixed incomes. In the meantime, here we have the Board of Ed going in the opposite direction, raising their budget up by 3.1% at a time when the official cost of living is only 2% increase. Seeing our teachers get major compensation increases over the next 3 years, up by 3.5% per year average. Paying for increases in cost per pupil over the last 5 years, up by 3% per year. It's time to apply the same position as Sir Isaac Newton with his rules of gravity. What goes up must come down. It's time for the Board of Finance to exert its financial stewardship. Cut the proposed Board of Education budget to no more than a 2% increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Please sign in.
Yep.
Good morning. David McKenzie. Who is that guy? 505 Merwins Lane, a resident of Fairfield for 40 years. I'm going to address the Board of Education budget. It's not a new statistic, but it's still an important one. Only 30% of Fairfield families have children in the school system. The other 70% do not, yet they're the ones paying over 2/3 of the bill. Now, this isn't wrong, since most of Fairfield residents support providing a first-class education for children, even other people's children. What is wrong is when that spending gets out of control, which is where I think we are today. With the number of pupils going down by 4%, it's irresponsible for the BOE budget to go up 3.1, way over the rate of inflation. If the rationale for this growth is the rich compensation and benefits agreed to with the unions, then the BOE should either do a better job in the negotiations or make compensating cuts elsewhere. Budget cuts don't mean you have to reduce expenses directly related to education. Instead, cuts should be made in the overhead and redundancy which clearly exist in the system. The 70% who don't have kids in Fairfield schools are truly the silent majority. Though they pay most of the bills, their voice for fiscal responsibility isn't being heard. Many are voting with their feet by moving to a more friendly tax environment. Look at all the for sale signs around the town. For the most part, these are people who are trying to escape an unfriendly town and state tax environment. And in the process, Fairfield housing values continue to go down. I'm reminded of my discussion a few years ago with an elected official who was also a parent. I asked him, when would you try to rein in the excessive increase in educational spending? His answer was, as soon as my youngest graduates from high school. Let's hope that this self-serving attitude is not representative of elected leaders today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Aiden Guernsey and I live at 241 Brookside Drive. I'm in 6th grade at Fairfield Woods Middle School. Thank you for letting me speak today. I love to learn and someday I would like to be a scientist. The science program at my school is amazing and I really enjoy all of the labs and activities. Our town's investment in the science curriculum is critical to the success of our students. My teachers need excellent instructional materials in order to do their jobs. Science is an increasingly competitive field, and Fairfield students deserve a strong science program. In addition, I would like to give a shout out to the Fairfield libraries and say that I love books and I love to read. Also, the library is a safe place for me and my friends to go after school. I hope you will support the education budget as passed by the Board of Education, and the library budget too. That's important.
Thank you.
And that is exactly why we should pass the Board of Education budget as presented. Kudos to you, young man. My name is Jennifer Barahona. I'm a resident of 74 Cardinal Street here in Fairfield. I have 2 children at McKinley Elementary School, and I'm here to speak in support of the library budget as well as the Board of Education budget. The library is a resource that all of us use, particularly our seniors, and I urge you to pass it as presented. The Board of Education budget, while I've not, obviously, presented any formal remarks here today. I come from more of a place of passion, especially hearing some of the people that stood in front of me. I'm a social worker who is married to a teacher, and to think that any teacher in this country is paid anything close to what they are worth is absolutely outrageous. It makes me shake with anger when I realize, as a social worker, I'm the breadwinner in my family of a teacher who gives his heart and soul every day in the classroom. He had a young man come back just last week who he doesn't even really remember, wasn't one of the standout students, who 7 years ago he said, I'm becoming a doctor today because of you and what you've done for me in my life and as a role model for me. Our teachers, especially in this day and age, are just asked with doing everything, from educating to being a social worker to being a parent, and now as I move from here to Hartford to March for Their Lives, to protecting our young people. Nothing is more important than our students and our educational system. I urge you to pass the budget as presented by the Board of Education. We sought out a superintendent who this town trusted to put forward a responsible budget. I believe they have looked at every cut possible and have presented to you a fair budget. With all due respect, those who have children who are no longer in the system had children, most of them at one point, that were in an educational system, be it Fairfield or otherwise. When I was a young person, a single person, I supported a budget even though I had no children in the school system, as I will do when my children move on from the school system. They are also the educated workforce that is going to be needed to require help for seniors in this town. As a social worker and one who works with people who do not have children in the school system, we are the ones that are helping. That young man that just spoke is going to be the one that is helping. We owe them nothing less than passing a robust budget that is going to support all their needs. Thank you.
Please sign in.
Good morning. I want to thank you for your time and service. I know this hasn't been an easy fiscal year, and I just want to let you know I appreciate that. I really didn't want to come up and speak today and tell my story because it's very personal, and I'm taking a risk. I have been a resident for 49 years of Fairfield. I went to school at North Stratfield and Ward. I have 3 children. All 3 of my children went through Fairfield Public Schools. 2 of my children have serious disabilities. My son has autism, and my daughter has a mental illness. My son received excellent services while he was at Fairfield, but they cost a lot of money. If he didn't have those services, I would hate to think where he would be. Right now, he is at a college, Champlain College, and he's completely independent on the dean's list. He will be a productive member of society. My daughter, however, should be at Ward, is outplaced at a school for children with special needs. After working with Fairfield Public Schools and trying everything within our power to keep her in Fairfield Public Schools, it became clear after hospitalizations and gaining over 100 pounds in 3 years by the time she was a junior at Ward that it wasn't working. It cost Fairfield a lot of money to put her where she belongs, and it also cost me and my family a lot of money. I'm also a teacher at Ludlow High School. I am not the breadwinner in my family, and we would never be able to afford to give my children the services they need if my husband was not earning the salary, more than double mine, to get my children the help they need. And I also want to speak to the elephant in the room. We all wring our hands and wonder what can be done when we see all of these shootings in Newtown, in Columbine, at Parkland. Something should be done. Well, I can tell you that now is the time that we can do something. At meetings like this, we need more money for the education budget, not less. I can tell you that talking to my kids in the classroom and kids who come after, we need services to support them and educate them, and that requires time, body, and resources. So I urge you, while I understand that it can be unaffordable, I, for one, am willing to pay more in taxes to support what is needed. And I will say that the 70% who don't have children in school will be affected by the tragedies that happen, whether they are violence or unemployable or otherwise, if we don't do something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning. So I moved to this town really just...
State your name.
Oh, sorry, yes.
No problem.
My name is Rena Paris. I live at 461 Morehouse Highway. And I moved to Fairfield because of the school system, so I certainly would hope that you will support the Board of Education's budget in full. I love to see that they're coming up with some new innovative ideas, especially in the younger grades where the kids really are just so able to absorb all these new ways of thinking and the new technology, and then they'll grow up with this comfort level that will help them, change our world. And speaking of innovation in town, I really have to discuss the library system. Even before the schools have been able to implement these things, we have been taking, my children and I, education, language, engineering, technology classes, but so much more than that. We have borrowed robots and taken them home and learned how to program them. We take out passes to museums and get hands-on experiences. We have learned creative thinking through incredible programs they set up for us, escape rooms. We have learned how to sew on their machines. We have taken cooking classes and art classes. We have homemade pasta night at our house now based on skills we learned at the library. We borrow seeds every single spring, plant a garden, which feeds us all summer long. You can borrow bikes from them. My husband uses the library as a place to do some work if he needs a change of scenery or see some familiar faces. It's changed my life. I found out we had a whole community of refugees here, and I volunteer with them every week. It has enriched my life and theirs, and I thank our whole community for having them. And the library is a place that it's so innovative, it's so enriching. And I moved from Stamford, as I said, because of the schools here. I have friends that are there that ask me all the time, what's happening with the schools? How do you feel about the education as they're thinking about where to start their families? And there are a lot of other towns around that are still much more affordable than Fairfield. And it really is our education and the schools that are drawing these new families in, and things like our libraries, which sort of supplement that and put us over the top. So please be considerate to them when you do your funding. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Alex Ressi. I live at 630 Shrub Oak Lane. I just want to share a slightly different perspective. I'm a newcomer to town. I moved here with my family from New York City in August, and it was the school system, by and large, that was a driver for me to get here. Looking around to various towns outside of and communities outside of New York City, Fairfield is an easy and very attractive option for many of the reasons that other people talked about, between the beaches and the woods and the space and the town itself. It's a wonderful community, and I'm very grateful to have found it. But education was a huge driver for us to get here. And I have 3 children, 2 of which are at Burr Elementary, one of whom will be going there as well. Getting involved in the community and seeing how the school functions, to me it's imperative to attract families like mine to come to Fairfield. You need to be investing in education. Education is going to be a huge driver, in addition to the fact that Fairfield is relatively affordable for people who are migrating from other locations compared to other things. But if you want to attract businesses to town, if you want to attract other young families that are going to support the community long term, you have to invest in education. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Herb Limecoler, 83 Spruce Street. I'm the coordinating director of a group called Fairfield Senior Advocates. FSA is a nonpartisan, all-volunteer citizen advocacy group dedicated to helping make Fairfield more affordable and more desirable for seniors, to keep seniors in Fairfield and in Connecticut. And I'd add that keeping our seniors here is the key to really being able to afford the education services that we provide to our children. Thanks very much for your service to our town. Our group is concerned for seniors as a key part of our community, but also because keeping seniors is critical to everyone's finances. Seniors represent about 15 to 20% of our population, but only a limited portion of our budget goes directly or indirectly to seniors. And on average, I think we need to think of this, on average, every time we lose a senior household, we incur a hefty type of tax. So growing economic pressures make it difficult for seniors to stay in Fairfield. But that's not the whole story. Large numbers of our seniors find it less than practical to stay here and or feel underappreciated for their contributions. And they all should be important to us. So our group works for a number of things. We work in the state legislature with legislative leaders to advocate for senior tax reform. We work to invest in senior services and facilities. We focus on senior tax relief and work closely with that committee of the RTM. And we work hard on attainable and affordable senior housing, because finding suitable housing options at all economic levels is a big challenge for Fairfield seniors. Our concern is that we see limited public acknowledgement of the importance of seniors to our community. And not to make a big deal of this, but your board's budget discussions of seniors and social services came directly after that of our fine library. There was a lot of drill down on the budget, even to the point of talking about how many audiobooks are we securing for our library going forward. But following that, there was very little discussion, a couple of questions, and almost nothing more in terms of discussion of our seniors and our social services budget. As a community, we need to think strategically about keeping our seniors. We need to keep strategic thought about that as an important part of funding all of our services, including our children's education. Our seniors need a message. Our seniors need a message from our town. You, all of you, matter to us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly McWinney, and I live on Churchill Road. Thank you so much for your service. I know that it's a challenging job, and I do thank all of you. I was not going to say anything today, but I just feel the need when I listen to the Fairfield taxpayer take that we have richly compensated teachers. These are individuals who are required to have advanced degrees, they need masters, and they are not, it's ludicrous, the rich compensation for people who are doing so much with so little. It's infuriating and it's tiring to hear it year after year. At the recent town hall meeting about gun violence prevention, Dr. Jones said, our budget goes to people. That's it. You can try to cut and try to take things from piece here, but it's a people budget. And we want to have in place the school counselors and the behavior programs that will actually make a significant impact on the well-being of everyone in the district and town. So I really ask that you support the budget as it's been presented to you by the Board of Ed. And in terms of seniors, I would love to see a more robust senior tax relief policy if we can make that happen. I hate the fact that seniors are pitted against children in this town. It does not have to be that way. My neighbors across the street are seniors. I value them so much. They've become family friends. My children have grown up with their grandchildren. I do not feel that I don't appreciate the seniors in town, and I want them to stay. Of course, they like to go to Florida because it's warmer, and there's really, unless you guys can change the climate in Connecticut, that way, I don't know what we can do about it. But
That's next year.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Flynn. So I just would ask that we stop using children against seniors or seniors against children in this conversation. That we don't have to do that. And if we could put the great minds that we have to finding, ways to grow our grand list or whatever it is, can we do that instead of always pitting these people against each other? Thank you.
Hi, Susie Meehan, 421 Lally Boulevard. Also, just to be noted, former PTA president at Sherman and former PTA council president. So I have a little bit invested in the education system. First of all, thank you all for what you do. And it doesn't go unnoticed. This is volunteer, and it's fantastic. Also, thank you so much to Dr. Jones and the Board of Education for the very thoughtfully crafted budget that they put together. I think we need to make note that this isn't your grandmother's school budget because these aren't your grandmother's times. Things are more complicated now. STEM, STEAM, rising expectations from colleges and beyond, school safety threats and threats to our children's emotional well-being, and let's not forget technology. We are on average 4 years behind comparable school districts in Fairfield County right now because in an effort to constantly cut, we failed to keep up. And while some might have viewed it as savings, there's a cost to everything. The numbers show a direct correlation between investment in education and property values. I don't know anyone who wants to pay more taxes. I certainly don't, but there's a cost and a value to everything. So I think it's important that we all come together as a society, as societies support each other and support the school budget. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rainey Noor. I live on Alberta Street, and I have 4 kids that went through public schools, or 2 are still in it. When we moved to Fairfield about 20 years ago, 19 years ago, there was no sportsplex. The downtown bookstore was empty, and Fairfield was fairly quiet. There was no Fairfield Theater Company. There was nothing really going on in Fairfield. But we came for the schools, and we came before it because it felt like a wonderful community, despite its kind of lack of vibrancy. Now, fast forward to today, we have a wonderful downtown. We have lots of good stuff going on for families, seniors, and everybody who passes through as well. And we have all these families that spend a lot of money in town because we have the orthodontists, we have the karate places, we have everything that kids use and that families want to partake in right here. And so families are, despite that they are sucking the taxes out of the town through the school system, they are here and spending a lot of money. And I tell you, having 2 kids at college right now is not cheap. If we never had children, we would living a fantastic life maybe somewhere else. But we clearly do not do that. And I don't say, oh, everybody needs to make the choices I made, but I also feel it's completely irresponsible and disrespectful to say people with children are the ones who basically are a burden on society. I think they are the ones who keep society going forward. So please consider that as in case you didn't know, I throw my wholehearted support behind this budget. Thank you so much.
College tuition is rough, but those orthodontists will still.
My name's John Levinson. I live at 883 Harbor Road. I want to thank the town for the creative and efficient running of Fairfield's operations that are up just 3% over 5 years. That's really incredible, I think, and kudos to Mike Tetro, department heads, and all who had a hand in this. The BOE is a different story, growing its budget 15% in 5 years and 20% higher on a per-student basis, as enrollment continues to decline, something that's expected to continue for a long time. Teachers just signed a contract giving them 3.5% annual growth in compensation for the next 3 years, which will be up 11% after those 3 years are done. As an advocate for education, I want to compensate teachers fully and completely and competitively. I contend that we should and need to boost teacher pay within the context of a flat overall BOE budget to meet the needs of our other parts of town and of taxpayers. The BOE should reduce spending in non-teaching areas, especially in the administrative overhead in the BOE building and throughout each of our schools. I'm actually optimistic this can be done. I have high hopes that maybe Dr. Jones is the person to do it. I know that she knows how to run a school with very little overhead. I've been to Skaggs, a school that she ran very successfully in Sydney, Australia. My 3 nieces go there. It's a world-class school no matter how you measure it, and it's run hugely efficiently. Second, the town has proven that they know how to do more with less and can bring some of this best practices to the BOE if the BOE would open their doors. Thirdly, cuts in education spending and aid from Hartford should ease the administrative burden accordingly on our school systems. As we get less money, we have less to keep track of and less requirements of the Hartford way of doing things. Unfortunately, the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and RTM have no way to affect where BOE spends its money. You cannot, those other boards cannot, and we as taxpayers cannot provide incentives or demand that the BOE become more efficient. All we can do is to affect the overall budget and leave it to the BOE to figure out how to live within their means, whatever we give to them. So I call on the Board of Finance to force the BOE to be good stewards of our investment in education, which I think should be as strong as possible. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, all of you, for doing this. Oh, I'm sorry. Tricia Picco, Board of Ed, parent, taxpayer. I'm here, one, to obviously advocate for the Board of Ed budget. If you or anyone had watched the meetings, you'd seen the extensive questions that I asked about the budget and vetted it, and obviously advocate for it. I'm actually come up here today. I was not able to attend the last Board of Finance meeting. I apologize for that. I know one of the many questions, because I did watch the meeting on Fair TV, was about special education funding. And as a member of SEPTA and the Board of Education Liaison, I am offering, if any of you have any questions, please, I am open as a SEPTA parent and a Board of Education member to answer those questions. So please reach out to me. I will try to call all of you before your final vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could you sign? Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Nancy Legary. I live at 245 Uncor Road, right in the district where I have 3 schools. And I want to tell you, you really try to figure out what time is best to leave your home. Otherwise, you don't get out. But I just want to let you know that I've been a resident of Fairfield for at least 60 years. My last child graduated right from this school in 1987, the same year it closed down. I have been supporting the Board of Education budget all these years. They went on to college and they did very well. And I do thank the education system for that. However, I do get a little annoyed, being a senior, as you can tell. I get annoyed when people say that we are being pitted one against the other. We are not. We are just trying to work the best for this town. And I feel in many ways, I'm also very active in the senior center, and I'm on different boards down there. And I really feel that we have to come together and try to figure out how to do something for all of us in this town. The other thing we need in this town is a better transportation system, and I don't see that happening either. And that would be very useful, I think, for students, for people wanting to go from the Post Road up to Black Rock Turnpike. So I do thank you for your service. I thank you for all the time you spend, and I appreciate what you've done so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. McGarry, can you please sign in? Thank you.
Good morning, Suzanne Miska, 123 Rygate Road. The budget before you is kind of like the tale of two cities. We have the town side of the budget, which seems to be coming in at the tightest it's ever been. And we have the Board of Ed budget, which, due to fixed costs, is coming in where it's coming in. Unfortunately, something has to give. My concern is this. On the town side, we're watching, we've got terrible roads, we have craters as potholes, and my concern on the town side is that we are foregoing what we need in funding, kind of like we did on the education side with maintenance of our buildings. And it comes back to haunt us in the form of $25 million redos and renovations because we let things go. So my concern is on the town side that maybe in an effort to make this look more tolerable to the general public, we've come in with something very, very narrow. And that's concerning, given the building that we're seeing of multi-residential 100-room facilities. That's eventually going to require our fire and police to also have to be looked at in order to meet the needs. On the education side, I thought the superintendent tried really hard to give you what you were sort of looking for. My concern is, while I appreciate the special education programs, I wish we didn't have to add people, because at the fixed costs that have basically been signed off by the RTM and the teacher contract approval, there's really nothing we can do on the fixed side unless we lose teachers, and I don't think anyone really wants that. But our hands are tied on the fixed costs. On the other side, there was an effort by the superintendent to reduce some of the supplies to our teachers, and unfortunately the Board of Ed saw fit to put that back in. I think that that's what our PTAs can stand up and help. It doesn't have to help in salaries, but they can help with paper and crayons and pencils and the things that our students need. I mean, at some point, we have to come to a balancing act.
Have a more complete, robust, and effective dialogue. Because right now, I don't think we have effective dialogue. It's sort of a binomial thing, yes, no. You want the budget, you don't want the budget. And I think we should have a much more robust discussion about this than we currently do. Again, Irene and I express our extreme thanks to all of you for your dedication to the Board of Finance and what you do. We really appreciate it. You are our last bastion of fiscal prudence for this town. You're it. You're the deal. So thank you for your service and thank you for what you're doing. And let's see if we can't find a better system to do this with. Constitutional Convention, something, I'm not sure what. Let's get to that, and I'll volunteer to work on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Havey, and I'm still living in my starter home at 216 Longview Avenue for the past 20 years. I'm brought up to the microphone tonight this morning, sorry. I'm usually speaking at night, so. The comment I want to address about PTAs, I'm a PTA advocate. I'm a people advocate. I'm an advocate for this town. But the idea that PTAs are going to fund schools is outside of the PTA purview. PTAs are advocates. We advocate for school lunches. We advocate for social justice. We advocate for juvenile justice. We advocate for education. We advocate for smart gun laws. We advocate for a lot of things. We don't and should never be advocating for a ream of paper. It's not gonna. Thank you. I'm shaking, I'm so upset. It's not appropriate. It's the job of the superintendent to put forth a budget that supports this town. Now, you guys can decide if we can afford it or not, but don't look to outside. Don't look to the Cub Scouts to buy, okay, well, if PTA will buy paper, maybe the Cub Scout will buy cups, or we can get somebody to buy chalk, or, oh, I know, we can get somebody else to buy all of our smart boards. If the school district creates a curriculum and creates a budget, it is up to the town to support that and to pay for that and to bring that to fruition. Taking off my PTA hat, if I might, it struck me earlier with the conversations about safety and about measurability and all of these statistics. We can't measure how safe our town is versus how much money we spend on fire and school safety and bulletproof glass and extra police cars, because we're lucky enough that we haven't been faced with anything more real than a swatting incident, and look what that did to our town. So when we look at measurability, we're lucky that we haven't had to face the dark side of that. So I urge you to support this budget in its entirety. The library, the pay raises that people are finally getting after taking cuts and cuts and cuts year after year after year. You have an obligation to the town as a whole, to support this town as a whole. And I hope that you will hear what I'm saying and give it some thought, even if you disagree with me entirely. Thank you.
I just want to, before we have the next speaker, I feel compelled to just mention something. Excuse me. based on what was just said. I appreciate that that was very heartfelt, and the only comment that I'll take issue with is, as it relates to we haven't been faced with the dark side. This board and a lot of the elected officials spend a fair amount of time talking to the police chief, talking to the fire chief, talking to the various department heads. And they're so good, particularly the police in this instance, because that's what we're talking about. We might be faced with things from the dark side that they stop before it happens, right? So there's things that happen that they take care of before it ever comes to fruition.
Am I permitted to respond?
You can respond to it. I just want to, and I'm not disagreeing, it's just we don't know all that goes on. And by the way, that also goes for school security, because in the last number of years, this board in particular has funded millions of dollars of increases in school security that, quite frankly, we're not allowed to talk about. And we shouldn't talk about in a public forum, because that would make the measures taken less effective. So I just want to, alert the public that they're very well protected. They're not completely protected, we can't be. But we're so lucky that they do a damn good job. And we're so lucky that the town has been able to afford, and all the town bodies have made a significant commitment to hardening our security and our assets around the schools. And I just want the public to know that. We just can't talk about it in a public forum.
I have absolute respect, and I agree with you 100%. I was PTA council president when Sandy Hook happened. I totally get it. But what I'm saying is the measurability of that. We spend a lot of money on those things, and we can't measure them the way Parkland can measure them. We can't measure them the way Sandy Hook can measure them.
Well, we can measure them from the fact that they've been successful to date. And at the
Absolutely.
end of the day, that's the ultimate
I respect that.
measure.
I'm just saying we're very lucky. And I'll leave it at that. And I thank you for your comments. I really do. 'Cause
We're very lucky because we've employed some very good people that help
Yes,
keep
and
us
I
lucky.
support these people. I have supported budgets. I have supported our police and fire all along. I don't believe over the past, 15 years that I've been doing this, I haven't missed one of these town hall events in the 10 years except once. I've never missed a vote in the town since I've lived here in '98. I support them. I have always supported them. But I think we're very, very lucky. And I think luck is hard to measure, and that's what I really want to get across. So I really thank you for taking the time to respond to me. I know it's unusual, and I have a great deal of respect for this body. And thank you for your time.
And thank you for all your work on behalf of the town as well.
I've done a few things. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Diana Sisler. I now live at 338 Bennett Street since about 6-8 months ago, but I lived right over the line in Black Rock, and my folks have lived in Fairfield for 45, going on 50 years. I am now living with my mom because I lost my husband and she lost my dad all last year.
Very sorry for your loss.
Well, that's not the reason I'm standing up here. It's the reason I'm living in Fairfield now, But my kid's sister did get to grow up here in Fairfield and was the beneficiary of everything that the school system here provided for her. She's many years my junior. And I know firsthand exactly how much my husband and I had to pay living in Black Rock to vaguely replicate the kind of services that she was getting as part of the public school system. Bridgeport's situation is obviously very different, but in some respects, it's the same zero-sum game that I hear, in essence, coming out of everybody's mouth that is opposed to seeing the Board of Education budget grow more than, let's say, the police or firemen. I mean, the whole thing is to look at everything that you are really trying to accomplish. I am also standing here before you as somebody who actually knows two different people from one workplace 35 years ago. One later became a special ed teacher. She lived through it. She was at Sandy Hook. And another person, another woman who's now the school librarian down at Parkland. Now, I don't know how many of you people actually know anybody who was actually firsthand, okay? And I have friends from 30 years ago, that far apart, okay? The problem is the mental health, but more importantly, it's the guns. And if you don't face that and you don't do everything that you possibly can in this moment to support all of the services that go to keep the kids from getting their hands on guns and also getting the mental health services that they truly need. And it's usually within the confines of the school system because that's where the problems are recognized. All right? And I used to live in Newtown. What happened in Newtown up in Sandy Hook actually does not surprise me. All right, so I'm just here to say, give them the money, let them do what the professionals really do believe they need. And worry about how you pay for it. Yeah, some, but that's not the focus. Okay?
Good morning. My name is Duncan Banfield. My family and I reside at 208 South Benson Road. I also have the pleasure to volunteer as a member of the Library Board of Trustees. We've heard from a number of constituencies here today of interest, and I want to remind the group, I'm sure it's pretty obvious to you all too, but the library serves all these constituencies very ably. And no doubt the challenges that you're forced to make in the budget process, I want to make sure that you understand two very important factors that we as a board, that what we have in terms of leadership at the library understand in our responsibility of serving the broader community. First is commitment to being that 21st century library, to being progressive. We've got a new leadership which has been a breath of fresh air in our library system, and we are absolutely committed to bringing services to our seniors, to adults, to teens, and to children within our town. Very important process and a very important priority for us. And the second point is one around responsibility. With the dollars that we ask for you from the budget this year, we have a commitment to you all to spend those dollars responsibly, to use them effectively, to serve these constituents as appropriately and as importantly as they should be served. Again, would encourage you to please support the budget as presented for the library for the coming fiscal year. Thank you.
Good morning. Jennifer Maxon Kennelly, a citizen and parent from Edgewood Place. And I rise first, well, to speak. Number one, I'd just like to say on the topic of senior tax relief is that I am one of many citizens that while senior tax relief does not apply to me right now, how thrilled I am that the RTM is taking this topic up, and that I hope all citizens in town are aware of that, that it is being worked through, and that it's certainly an object of a topic of importance to and a benefit to all of Fairfield citizens. So thank you to the RTM for that. But what prompted me to come to speak to you this morning were the opening comments. One, that this would be a budget that not everyone will be happy. I suppose I have to accept that as always a standard going forward, whether it's negotiations or a budget. But of particular concern to me as an educator, as a parent, as a citizen, is the idea that this is not a move forward budget. And I do understand that idea. I, under no circumstances, think that this is a budget which is aggressive in targeting many areas that we could. But when we say it's not a move forward budget, whom do we not move forward? And I'm obviously speaking specifically about the education budget. Whom are we leaving behind? Whom are we saying where they are right now, it's going to have to be good enough for right now? Will it be our English language learners, who are a targeted focus of this budget? Will it be our students with social emotional needs? They're doing okay, they're just going to have to hold the line where they are right now. And that's from grades K through 12. With our CLCs, with our social workers, do we say right now it's just going to have to be good enough for them? Is it with our science? Right now they're just going to have to make do with what they have, which we know isn't up to par with what we need. The restructuring that we're doing in our elementary schools to better serve the needs of our students. Now, we're just not going to have to serve them in a way that we envision we could moving forward. This is an investment, and it's an investment in our children. Thereby, it's an investment in our town. It's an investment in our state. It's an investment in our country when we do our job in Fairfield. And I know Board of Finance has always worked so well to have these thorough conversations. I enormously appreciate the thoroughness of your conversations and your insights and your queries, and we're up for any challenging that you offer of why is this needed, that while you can't specifically target a certain line, when you see an area where you view as being inefficient or wasteful, I'm open to hearing that. We're only a body of 9 on the Board of Ed. There's always another value to more sets of eyes, and I'm perfectly open to that. But again, that idea of not moving forward, I know this board, and I know that statement was not intended to say we equate a pothole to a student, but we have students with significant needs. And right now, while they may not be readily apparent on the surface, because our high-achieving students perform so well they hold up certain averages, we know there are these pockets out there. And in what I would consider a lean and responsible budget, we are going after those areas where we know there's room for improvement and where we're hoping for that support. And not to forget how important the teachers are in this, that I certainly object mightily to the comments. Okay, then I'll close with this, that to argue that teachers are getting rich compensation when in fact the raise of this year is below what was quoted as the 2% cost of living increase and they're getting a 1.5, that to me, by any metrics, is not rich compensation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So before we go on, a couple of comments on that entire discussion related to my opening comments. And when you sit in these chairs each year with the department heads that come before you, the discussion regards what they actually wanted and what's being presented. So when I said earlier that this is not move forward, paving, we're reducing in this budget the investment in paving. Fire personnel, a 0% increase or raises. Capital expenditures, particularly in areas like DPW, cut back. Library, yeah, they increased their spending on supplies, but it's not to the levels that it was a couple of years ago. We're using savings in this budget to offset tax increases to the tune of, I think it's between $1.4 and $1.6 million from not spending that in prior years. Each and every department, including the Board of Education, is not going to be completely happy, even if we approve their budgets as they stand. Because we're blessed with very good department heads who would like to move the town forward in many different ways. But because of budget challenges, because of what's going on at the state level, they're not allowed to do so. So it's not about, or a signal about us cutting budgets anymore. It's actually about where we already are and what we're already confronted with. No year is everybody happy with the budget decisions we'd have to make. They'd like to invest more in the beaches. They'd like to invest more in the marinas. They'd like to invest more in the library. They'd like to invest more and deal with everything going on at every school, including every maintenance issue. It just doesn't happen. And when times are tough like they are now, it most certainly doesn't happen, and things get pushed off. So that was the nature of my comments earlier. And it's going to be that way for this foreseeable future until the macroeconomic environment in the state of Connecticut gets a bit better. Thank you.
Good morning. John Convertito, Oyster Road. Currently PTA Council President for second year, former Board of Ed member, and I've served on probably every other type of committee that this town has had in the last 20 years. When you approach the Board of Ed budget, one of the things you have to ask yourself is there value there? Okay? And as I look around today, I notice the crowd is somewhat smaller than it has been in previous years. And I'll give you a reason why that is. Because at 4:30 this morning, over 100 of our high school students boarded buses to go to D.C. to march, okay, for their rights to be in a safe school. That was funded partially by PTA Council. Those are the roles of PTAs, is to supplement, not to supplant funding, okay? And of those kids that got on there were kids from all different ranges on whether on gun control issues, okay, on safety and so forth. But they sat down as a group and came to a consensus of what it meant to them, okay? And that's the value of this budget. Those are the young people you are creating with this educational program, okay? Much has been said about compensation and future contracts. It wasn't so long ago, okay, that our teachers union came back to the table when we were in dire financial straits and took a 0% increase, okay? Look at your history, okay? This system, okay, needs to move forward, and it's not about maintaining. It's about constantly improving, okay? I ask you to support this budget in its entirety, and I thank you for your service.
Good morning. My name is Loretta J. I am a parent. I live at 116 Rolling Ridge Road, parent of 2 children, and also the co-president of NAMI Fairfield, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I wasn't planning on speaking this morning, but I wanted to echo something that Ms. Maxon Kennelly said, as well as present another, something else to think about as you're looking at this budget. I encourage you to support this budget, but I want to talk about children who have social emotional difficulties in our school system and the ROI that we are getting by supporting their needs. It is not just the services that they're providing to help them make it into adulthood, to make them be participants in society and to have a place in our community. It is also the investment in the foresight in recognizing that failure to provide these services will cost our school system and our town more money if and when they require outplacement, which can cost $50,000 to $100,000 a year per child. So by providing a little bit more in terms of social work services, psychology services, guidance counselor services, and the special education services, we are preventing a much more larger cost. So we have 2 things to look at. One is our goal is to make our kids succeed in life, and this is giving them that foundation. The second is to save us money in the long run, and investing in these services is preventative. Thank you.
Good morning. Trudy Durrell, 64 Woodcrest Road. This morning I am here speaking to you on behalf of the Fairfield Woods Middle School PTA as their president for the 2nd year in a row. I know you asked us to be creative. Tom, I don't really have a lot of creativity in me after all the speakers today. However, I would encourage this board to the extent possible to accept the education presented in front of you. And as a PTA president, I would also like to caution you against considering any town body, considering that PTAs pick up any of the funding. Not only would that create some substantial inequities, because as a PTA at Fairfield Woods, for example, I have 921 students to think about, along with the school administration and staff, as opposed to one of the other middle schools that has fewer than 700. And we don't always have the same level of fundraising, so you automatically have an inequity. And again, I would echo Ms. Havey and Mr. Convertito's comment. PTAs are here to support the Board of Education and the budget, not to provide it. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Glaze Capuano. I live at 1006 Valley Road here in Fairfield. I don't often get an opportunity to attend many of the town meetings. In fact, the last time I stood up and talked before the Board of Finance, we were trying to make sure that we could get funding to improve the playground at the ECC. My children were that young back then. I am a parent of 2 children with special needs, both of whom have a primary diagnosis of autism. My husband and I actually ended up purchasing our home in Fairfield, not because of the schools, but it was because we got the most value for our dollar. Now, we purchased our home in 2006, which was right before the housing bubble burst, and we've been basically underwater since then. But given the fact that our children were then diagnosed shortly thereafter, it's been important for us to stay here in Fairfield because of the education that they are receiving. My children are thriving. They are thriving in our schools. It was necessary a number of years ago to transfer them from our home school of Stratfield to Osborne Hill School. The reason for that is because there is a specialized classroom available there called the CLC. It provides specialized instruction to some of the most significantly impacted children in our district. It allows them the opportunity to have a curriculum developed and a method of teaching provided to them that is strictly based on their needs and their abilities. This past year, there was such a need in district that a new CLC was opened at Burr and a second one opened at Osborne Hill School. What I've also noticed at Osborne Hill this past year is a decrease in the amount of social support available at the school. We used to have a full-time school psychologist and a full-time social worker. So while we have increased the number of children with special needs, especially the more significantly impacted, we've decreased the availability for social support for those children. That makes no sense to me. It makes no sense. When my older son moved to Fairfield Woods this past year, thankfully he was able to graduate out of the CLC program, and a lot of that has to do with the kind of specialized instruction that he received while he was still at Osborne Hill School. When it comes to our budget, our education budget, this past year and a half, we have seen significant changes just in our own school department. We've got pretty much a brand new superintendent of schools who I think has taken a very proactive approach at, first of all, how she runs the department and funding and things. And we've also got a brand new special education director who I think is really doing a fine job of reassessing the way our special education department has been run for the last, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. And I think that we need to do all that we can to offer them the support that they are asking for in this current budget. I thank you all so much for your time and your dedication to working for our town, and I thank you again for the opportunity to get up here and speak.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're getting to any point.
Good morning. Kevin Lennon, 51 Daves Lane. Thank you for your time to the board. I think I've met or know most of you over the years. I come before you today. I was requested to come by one of the members of the Board of Ed. I'm usually much more tuned in. This year I was a little bit tuned out. But I've read some of the numbers. I've seen some of the debate going back and forth. And I really hope you can all find it within yourself to try your best to support the ed budget. I think it's really on point. I went through it myself. I know there's always debate back and forth in the town, and that's healthy among the different constituencies. I've had both my kids go through Mill Hill, one kid now here in 10th grade, another kid across the way here at the middle school. The schools are fantastic, and they are definitely a kind of a mooring point for our entire community. I think we all know that. So the degree that you can support it, you can find it within yourself to approve this budget and leave it to the professionals who have really, I'm sure, labored over every single line in the budget, as you guys do as well, and to support it, that would be fantastic. The other thing I've just observed, I came in here around 10 o'clock, I've seen probably about 20 speakers. I think it's at least 10 to 1, maybe even greater, in support of the ed budget, in support of other ed budgets. Like I said, I know there's dissenting opinion, but what I see year over year in this debate that goes back and forth, the one main group in town that kind of always says there's room to bring down the ed budget is, we want to spend as much as we can and we want to support education as much as we can, but whatever the rate of increase is year over year is too much. I think that's a little disingenuous. If a specific item, and I know you guys can't do that, but if a specific item or a specific spending request is seen out of bounds, I think you'd hear about it from the town and say, that's a bridge too far. I don't see that here. It's just that similar refrain just saying this is too much, and I don't think that's right. So again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.
All right. Oh, one more speaker.
Hi,
Hi, Jessica Gerber, 25 Shady Hill Road, a member of the Board of Education. I voted to support this budget, so I hope you will as well. I did just want to add, I know one of the new items is a CLC at the middle school and CLCS at Riverfield. I do know that members of this board were invited to see the CLC programs that are already in existence. So I would sincerely hope that you take the time to go to one of these schools that already has a CLC to see that program, because I think it would really, really be helpful in understanding what that program entails and how important and vital it is to the entire system. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple more.
Morning, Frank Sahagian, 20 Chelsea Street. I have the distinct pleasure of having two cards, a Medicare card and carrying a teacher's card for the Fairfield Education Association. So I can speak for both sides, I understand it. But I do urge you to, at the very least, accept this modest 3.1% increase to this Board of Education budget. First let's look at this in the context of other communities around the area, whether it be Easton, Norwalk, Trumbull, Greenwich, Westport, New Canaan, all of those have increases in their proposed budgets that are in excess of 3.1%. As the late, great Senator Patrick Moynihan said, everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but not their own facts. Let's look at the facts. Per pupil expenditures, while recognizing that some on this board have minimized this measure in the past, I would say, what would you suggest using? Or I would ask that question. And I do think it's safe to say that if we were at the top of that scale, we might be hearing a different tune. Fairfield, $17,000 in round numbers. PPE is on a trajectory of a race to the bottom, not to the top, with very few surrounding districts in southern Fairfield County who spend less. And it's almost $1,500 lower than the average of these same districts. And I would add, we have two high schools. And to think that running two high schools doesn't add added burden financially would be ludicrous. Another objective statistic is the Anglic rating of Fairfield, where we're rated at 16. The rating used by the state to basically establish a town's wealth for the purpose of educational cost sharing, which has improved from 22 over the last 5 years. So in response to those who are saying our real estate values are going down, that's fallacious. Then the argument, if you want to look at PPE as it relates to one of the surrounding towns of Westport, they spend $20,387 per pupil to our $17,005, and they have only one high school. And would it also add about, in terms of the budget, in the percentage of where the money goes, in the case of Westport, they spend 82% of their budget to salaries and benefits. We spend 78%. So if you took our salaries and looked at salaries and benefits alone per pupil, Westport spends more per pupil than we spend entirely for our students. Those critical of the salaries and benefits of teachers in Fairfield, I will say, having been on the negotiating committee of the contract, I can unequivocally say that our pay is not competitive. If you looked at the surrounding areas, especially in shortage areas, we're losing teachers in middle of the year. So it's time to connect the dots with all those issues. I'm happy to hear that at least one board member expressed a concern about this being a raise within budget and shared Dr. Jones' concern about supporting staff when she was asked about her greatest concern about the proposed budget. We lost 5 special ed teachers in the past year alone. This is a conservative budget, and frankly wish the Board of E would have been more aggressive in what they asked for. I'm not really sure what to expect when you reconvene to vote, and I know you can't be specific, but I hope it's just not an arbitrary number. Yet having said that, I urge you, do not cut a dime. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Peter Rupert, 180 Warwick Avenue. First, just want to say thank you for your service to our town. And just, complete transparency, my wife is a teacher in Fairfield. I have a daughter at Ward, and I have a freshman in college who went through the Fairfield school system here. The BOE budget has been, looked at with a fine-tooth comb for years, and our per pupil, as the previous speaker said, our per pupil levels are below surrounding towns that we like to compare ourselves to, and we do have a quality school system here. But there are realities, and you spoke with some of those realities. Increased funding for security. We have increases in numbers of students with special needs and English language, second language learners. In addition, there's study after study about the pressures our students are facing and what we need to be able to help them through that through our schools. anyway, just to wrap up here, I think that if you are considering, and I am in support, that I would like you to support the budget as is, and that if you are considering cuts to the budget, then I'd like you to think about what you would say to those families that are now starting on their journey of putting our students through, and how that's going to impact their education of those kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, I'm Ben Hawley, Nichols Road. This is Abby, and I have another one here, Allie, and I have also a kindergartner in Riverfield. I would like to say, first of all, that seeing the growth in Ava, my kindergartner, from when she started the year to now, she is now reading, which she wasn't before. She comes home every day and she asks me to check her math homework. She's excited about math, and she absolutely adores art. When I look at the budget as proposed by the BOE, for example, they've found creative ways to fill some of the gaps in the budget. So, like kindergarten, for example, you want to get down? Yeah. She's done. So I'll wrap it up and just say I urge you to support the budget as the BOE has proposed it, because education is the reason we moved here. It's the reason we stay here, and there are a lot of options around here that we could consider. She's going to join you in a minute here. So I just urge you to support the budget as proposed by the BOE. Thank you.
The way she cut you off, I wish I had her more time to do the job.
Good morning. Good morning. My name is Tracy Petchkis. I live at 172 Nickel Street. I came this morning because my son is right next door at a town-sponsored program for his social skills. 7 years ago, I heard the words learning disability, which I didn't know what that meant. I also heard the word autism, which I learned to know. So 7 years ago, I went to my very first PPT and was told my son has learning disabilities and we're going to give him services and we're going to do all these things. Now, I live here in Fairfield for 20 years. My husband is a lifelong resident, but he went to private school. I'm a public school person. And I also work now in Fairfield for the past 4 years. So me as a project manager, I know it takes three things, right? Time, people, and money. So at the time, 7 years ago this month, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what time meant, right? I didn't know what people meant, and none of that meant anything to me. So here I am today, a parent of two children. My son, who is now 14, a freshman here at Fairfield Ludlow High School. Sorry, I probably don't need the mic. And another son, a sixth grader at Roger Ludlow Middle School. And I couldn't be happier that my husband forced me to come live here when I didn't know what that meant. My son is a straight A student. He attends the aquaculture program in the morning, right? And he's been getting special ed services for the past 7 years. He is a regular education student. He gets pulled out, but he does need a little bit of extra time, sometimes on tests, sometimes from his teachers. He does need a little extra money to educate because, there is a cost to doing that. But what I'm here to tell you is his plan right now is for him to go to college by himself, independently. So when he turns 18 and he graduates from Fairfield Public High School with a diploma, and he's going to go to college, of which my husband and I now have to pay for, thank you very much for that, he's not going to have those extended services because he's been educated here through a special education program, of which is phenomenal. Come to a regular classroom, see what happens there. And I just want you to support this budget because there's a lot of success stories. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Vitale, 254 Vernon Hill Road. I'm a member of the Board of Education. I did approve this budget. I'm asking you to do the same. You've heard a lot about special education this morning. I also have a child who has special needs. I can tell you my own personal story, but I will not. Because this budget, while special education is a big driver for the education budget this year, and we are putting forth some programs that will help students that do have significant needs, and I hope that after hearing some of these stories, you will see that is an investment that leads to positive outcomes. There's also a lot of other things that the education budget is moving forward this year. We're bringing a new science curriculum to the high school, new materials, new STEAM programming to the elementary schools, new technology to the middle schools. And I think that, bigger picture for Connecticut, as we talk about the types of jobs that are going to be in the state and the type of people that we want to attract to the state, I think our education is building those people. And we've seen families, we've heard that they come here. I'm going to take a break because I'm just getting very emotional about this. But it's a passion for our town and for the services that we want to provide and for the type of people that we want to attract to Connecticut and to Fairfield. It's been said before by some that families do drive our local economy. This is not just about the schools. This is about small business owners, keeping our businesses thriving downtown. And you'll be hearing a presentation from Alona McBroom about enrollment projections. One piece of data is that more children start kindergarten in Fairfield than are born here. People are moving here for our schools. I urge you to please continue to invest in them. They are among our town's greatest assets. To cut them just for the sake of cutting would be doing us all a disservice. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no others, I'm going to turn it over to board members for comments, and I'm going to start ladies first. So I'll go with Ms. Desma to my left. Does the mic work?
I'm there. Hey. Well, good morning. Thank you to everyone who came out, and especially thank you to everyone who sent us emails and messages. I'd like to hear from more of you more often. I love this town. So many of you stole my thunder. I moved here 10 years ago without children because of our schools. And I will be a senior in a couple of years, so I understand both sides of that. I want to commend this town, our administration, and so many others, department heads, this body. What we have done in this town since the financial crisis is nothing short of amazing. We've restored our AAA rating. We attract families. We attract businesses. Our grand list has actually gone up. Our population has gone up. And it's because we know how to invest. But there is a difference between knowing the cost of everything and the value. So while there are areas where we have achieved great cost savings, where we have been very frugal, achieved great efficiencies, I just want to emphasize that as a champion, and that's what I think I am working on this board, a champion for this town, I want to focus on the kind of investments that will keep our town high on the list of people who want to come here. And of course, as we know, our schools is almost on the top of that list. But we also have one of the best senior tax relief programs in the state, and we can be very proud of that. So it is a pleasure to serve all of you. We always have tough decisions to make, but I want to end this on a positive note. We have challenges. We are not in the kind of crisis we were in 2008. We can meet those challenges, and I think especially because all of you want to be involved in this town. It's not a spectator sport. We need all of you to be there, to vote, to call us, let us know what you feel, express your concerns, and tell us how you can help us as much as we can help you. So thank you for coming, and it is really, truly a pleasure to serve this town.
Thank you. Go to Mr. Murray. Does it work? Do you want to use this one?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm technologically challenged. So hi, I'm Sheila Marmion. I've been on the board for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I was on the Board of Selectmen briefly. I was on the RTM for close to 3 terms, and I've loved being on these boards and serving the town. And I think I got involved because I'm passionate about this town itself, and I'm so thrilled to be here today and hear from you because you're passionate as well. I think we're truly fortunate in this town to have a diversity of people, thoughts, ideas, and passions, and that came through today. I'm committed as a board member to listening to you and to balancing all of those diverse passions, and needs. I'd like to thank our department heads, as well as other boards, including the Board of Selectmen and our first selectman. This board in particular, I think, has done a wonderful job of really putting this town in a great financial position to really weather some of the storms, and that, of course, includes the cut in municipal aid, which is such a stressor, and yet, in spite of that, truly, I think the budget that is before us, both on the town side with 1.2% increase and on the Board of Ed side at 3.1 or 2%, is so reasonable. And I am thrilled that we're in a situation where I believe we can support these budgets. There's been a lot of talk about the Board of Ed side specifically, and some of what I hear you saying is, you know, we need to invest. It's not just cut our way to prosperity, which frankly is not possible for us to do. That's not how we're going to get ahead. I do believe in investing in our schools, investing in our town services overall, and I believe that the Board of Ed budget in particular, because it is 65% of our total budget, I don't think that that's an unreasonable amount of money. I think that investment is reasonable. And many of you have spoken about what that investment entails, including investing in social workers, investing in other areas, and I think that's critically important for us moving forward. So I do support that. I support that balance. And I'd like to just conclude by saying that we are here to really figure out a way to marry our excellent services with our taxes, to kind of create that balance. And I'm committed to that because at the end product is that value that we all look for as members of this town, as constituents. So I will look for value in these budgets moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Why don't we go to Mr. Mottola since the mic's not there? We'll start from that end and work our way back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. You know, I've been serving on this board for many years, and it's a pleasure serving with my colleagues. I was on the Board of Education for 6 years and also served a term on the RTM. Once again, thanks for coming out. So, I mean, like I do every year, I think looking at the budget is really just a balancing act. And I'm looking at it, the total increase if we pass the budget today is about 2.25%. To me, that's relatively a nominal increase. It's right at the rate of inflation if you want to use that as a measuring stick. I'm not sure we should always be using that, but some individuals think that that's what we should use, and I appreciate that. And I think in Fairfield, we offer tremendous value, and we have been over the last several years due to the good work of the Board of Selectmen, this board, and the RTM, and the Board of Education. We have great recreational opportunities for everybody in town. I do think we have great services for our seniors, our senior center, and senior tax relief. Can we do more? Yes, and we should strive to do more. And of course, I think we have great value in our school system. And to me, it's important that we do our best to maintain that. I've been reading the emails the last few days, and a couple of things I want to point out. We've been getting emails that our population in Fairfield is decreasing, and why are we spending this type of money? Well, the fact is, since 2010, our population has increased. It's up about 3%. So we're not losing people. People are moving here. And I think they're moving here because of the value of those services that I just mentioned: schools, recreation, seniors. And I think if we don't invest in our schools, it hurts our property values. And if we don't invest in some of these other programs that we provide our citizens, libraries, I think in the long run, it will hurt our property values. And I think this board has, for the most part, invested in those services. And I think hopefully we're going to maintain and keep doing that. Now, I think at times, and I understand, is that we get caught up in the mess of Hartford. And we all agree that Hartford is totally messed up, that it needs to get its act together. But that, I think, in a negative way, influences us at times. And although we have to be cognizant of that, we're not Hartford. Fairfield is not Hartford. We are a well-run town because of the Board of Selectmen, this board, the RTM, and the Board of Education. Through their efforts, we are run very well. We have a AAA credit rating. Our fund balance is good. People keep moving here. And because of our actions, we've demonstrated that Fairfield does have value. Our downtown is booming. So again, the way I look at it, to me, the budget, it's a balancing act. It's based on priorities. And I think right now the 2.25% increase is totally responsible. I'm sure it's going to get adjusted somewhat, but I think it's a responsible budget. And right now I intend to support it. Thank you.
I'm David Becker, and this is my 9th budget overall, and thanks for coming out. I mean, this year has certainly been no different than, I want to say, the other 8. Sometimes I think it would have been nice to have lived in the boom years when money was flush, but we've been in austere times. We've been in very difficult times for the town side budget and for the education budget all the way through since the recession. And as soon as we thought that it might get better, Hartford crept in. Sometimes I think it'd be almost nice to say this to be Hartford just next week when all of their debt gets wiped out. But we've got about $25 million worth of debt per year that we pay for in our budget. Pays for all of things like we talked about earlier, the school security, the building, a lot of projects in town. And even that's had to tighten up. The budgets are tight. The bonding of things are tight. And it's difficult because you have to sit here and you have to think about weighing one, potentially one constituency against another or one department against another. And it's not that simple, but sometimes it does feel like that. I mean, obviously, people getting up here days like today, you sort of look at both sides of it. But it's much more, it goes much deeper. I think we spend a lot of time really weighing, making sure that we provide the funds even when tight. We don't hit a threshold that, if the budget was up with a tax increase over 3%, the room would probably be even more filled and everyone would have a problem. But at the same rate, I could think of 100 things I wish we could spend money on. The first, usually for me, with public safety background, starts there. But everyone in this town, from an education perspective to those departments, is trying to get by and be as tight as everybody can. And I think I hope everybody sort of looks at all the details. I think sometimes we get vague emails, sometimes we get detailed ones. I think really everybody in this town grasping the depth of everything, which you can usually hear in our meetings. I think we do a good job on that. It's important, but certainly going to weigh everything heard today and everything that we've heard from everybody else and try to keep moving our town, all of our town, forward in hopefully the best direction we can for everybody in this town as well. Thank you.
Mr. Becker? Mr. Brown?
Good morning, and once again, thank you for being here. And thank you for the comments. Just want to focus on a few comments. One of our residents said that she moved here 20 years ago. She came here for the school. She has 2 children right now in college. Is she still here by any chance? Okay. So 20 years ago, she stated that she moved here for the school, so she has 2 kids in college, and I feel her pain. I have 4 daughters, and that's just a lot of college bills right there. So, but it's worth it. It's all good. It's all good, and they're successful. And every one of them went to the school system here, from Osborne right up through here, Fairfield, Ludlow. And we're very happy, we're very proud of how they're doing and how they're moving forward and of their accomplishments so far. I still have 1 daughter here, she's a junior. But then we had a gentleman who came by. He just moved in from New York City. Is he still here by any chance? He has 3 children. There we go. Good luck to you. Those bills will come. And you stated that you moved here due to the school system. Okay, so we've had 20 years, and I believe, when we moved here 20 years ago, for various reasons. Of course, one of them was the school system. So it just, and I think it's a small sample, what's in this room, but I think, though, that it's also an example, and I believe this to be true, that for 20 years we have invested in our school system appropriately, and will continue to do so. We had a resident from Umpqua Road that said, you know, we're one town, which is true, at least for 11 months of the year. I mean, it gets a little tough during the month of March, but, you know, we come together, the budget comes together, and we all move forward, and we are one town. So, and as the Board of Ed, or the Board of Finance, as we get together, look, all voices are heard, all emails are read. It's never an easy fiscal year. There's always difficult decisions, and that will never change as long as we have budgets, because that's what budgets are. They're trade-offs. But we seem, and we have during the past, at least the 9 years I've been on this board, have come to an agreement, and we move forward, and we're doing okay. I would like to state that I respect the department heads of this town, the passion they have as they get up and they speak with us, and they do an excellent job. And I want to thank them. I want to thank the administration for the Fairfield Public School System, the work they do. And look, there is a state fiscal crisis, and they're navigating their way through that. There's just no doubt about it. You could look at the budget book. Look at the education cost sharing. It was $3.5 million a few years ago, and there's nothing, at least projected to be zero. You have the residential placements that are no longer fully funded. You have these additional mandates that are unfunded. It's all in the budget book. Excess costs, that's for special ed, and this is coming from Hartford. There's a possible formula change. It may or may not happen. I mean, the state didn't even have a budget, I don't think, till October. I mean, right? They were 4 or 5 months behind, and so we're all dealing with that. People may be moving into Fairfield, but they're not moving into Connecticut, and that's just a fact. And we can't get away from that. So we're dealing with Hartford. Businesses and people are moving out, and I know that because I work for a company that moves them out. And we have a customer right now. They're going to move to Ohio. I mean, it's happening. And so we deal with that, and we deal with that with our budget. There's never really a cut to the budget. What there is a reduction to the increase, if there's even that. So we don't want to spread anxiety and say there's going to be a cut to the budget. We look at the total increase, and we have to make a determination, and we have to make a decision on that increase. But I think what we've shown over the past 20 years is that we'll continue to invest in this town. I agree with John that there is always a balance that we look for every single year, that this budget comes before us. So again, thank you to everybody for being here, and thank you to the administration, and thank you to the department heads, and wish us luck over the next week or two.
Thanks, Jim. Good morning, Chris DeWitt. I come to this meeting every year with no notes and no preconceived notions. I see how this is going. So today's theme for me is advocacy. Fairfield is a sum of all its parts: our seniors, our juniors, our schools, our libraries, all of it. Services are very important to us. Our fire, our police, our chief's back there, thank you, Chief. Our paving, our snow removal, our tree removal. I get more questions in town. Why are there still trees in my front yard, Chris, after the storm? Our building departments. these people don't get advocates. So guess what? We get to be their advocates. So when you're watching a board finance meeting and Chris DeWitt sits there and spends 30 minutes asking about paving, that's why. Doesn't mean I don't love our libraries, doesn't mean I don't love our kids, doesn't mean I don't love our Board of Ed. We have to think about, this board has to think about every part of Fairfield. Schools are important. They're 65% of our budget. They better be important, right? And a majority of our board here has had children in the school system. Some are coming up. Dave's are getting ready to come into the school system. And only because we're at Ludlow, I got to say, go Ward, because I have 2 freshmen at Ward. But I can tell you that our services, those services that I just mentioned, they have been cut, and they have been reduced. Look at the town side budget. Things have been reduced. As Mr. Flynn said before, paving, all these things, they've been reduced. So they're making their sacrifices. You know, even though the inadequate state funding is becoming an everyday norm, our chairman even said it today, we're not going to spend time on it like we did last year. It should not be the norm. We should not have to wait till October for a budget. We do. We push these things off and we make contingency plans. But this board has to weigh all of the pieces of the budget 12 months a year. Not just March. It's when we all get to sit and talk about it, but 12 months a year we get to weigh this along with all the department heads and the superintendent and the boards. So your comments are greatly appreciated, and I can only speak for myself, but they do weigh into how I vote. And please remember that this board has to weigh all the pieces of Fairfield when we vote. So after we vote, please keep that in mind, and again, as Mr. Brown said, wish us luck. Especially this year, given the fact that the night we vote on the budget, we're going to be talking about 2 new school proposals for Sherman and Mill Hill that very same night. So as you think about March, and as you think about the other 11 months, and the budget before us, and the tasks in front of us, please think that Fairfield's a sum of its parts, and again, we have to consider all of them. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. My name is Jim Walsh. I'm going to try to be quicker. I know everyone's spoken here, so I don't want to repeat a lot of things that have already been said, but every year we come here, and as other speakers have said here, it's kind of a balancing act that we are all forced to go out and walk a tightrope on, because the needs are always more than the money that we have or the tax increases that we could potentially raise without causing everyone to leave. So it is a complete balancing act between dollars and town services and a first-class school system. And I say first-class school system because that is what we have. That is what we want. That is what our taxpayers deserve. And that's why a lot of people are here, as we heard a lot of speakers. So it is that balancing act that we are doing right now. And let's talk about the dollars first. I mean, this is an extremely challenging year, not because of the town side, the smaller than usual increases and things like that, but it's because of things like losing General Electric. It's their $1.8 million that they would write a check to this town for every year. And how do we replace that? Well, we don't. They're gone. The property's been sold to Sacred Heart, and Sacred Heart doesn't have to pay any taxes under the current format. So we're not going to get, at least I don't see, unless something major happens, another Fortune 50 company to come in that's going to be writing us a $1.8 million check. So we have to find that money. That's almost like a tax increase on its own. That makes this year difficult. We're also under attack by our own state, by our governor. Thank God that's coming to an end. And I'm praying for leadership that'll come in and change that. But it's been leadership all over the state that has kind of caused some of these problems. We're getting cut like $5 million, losing state aid to our education system. Once again, money that we have to make up. Another tax increase. These are the problems we're facing. If all those things were normal, if the state was acting normally, which they're not, if GE was still here, this wouldn't be a particularly difficult budget year. Not at all. This room would probably be empty. But it's not. We're having to deal with the realities of where we are. Businesses are leaving the state. Yes, we have a duty to give a first-class education to the people that are here. But there needs to be changes up at this state so that this becomes a business-friendly community for the entire state. Let's talk about education. I'm a product of the system. My son is first-class education system. I'm praying that someday my child decides to stay here and my grandchildren would go to this school system. And I'm very happy to hear from a lot of the people in this room who came up to speak for education, that their children are thriving, that they're getting a great education. Because having been a product of it, it's something that I want to make sure continues. So it made me feel good to hear that people are getting a good experience, because we are paying a lot of money for it. But it was good to hear that. I heard some people talk about that we've made cuts to education. We have not made cuts to education. I mean, you know, the number's right here. There's been an increase to education for every year except one in the last 20. And that 1 year was during the recession, where there was a 0% increase. So there's been no cuts. There's been changes to the rates of increase, but there's been no cuts. We have made an investment in our education system. We continually make an investment in our education system in different programs, in the increases that we give, and particularly to the buildings and the respectful buildings and the first-class buildings we put our children in. And look at this facility. It's pretty nice. Go to Riverfield. That was just redone. Stratfield School, Burr Elementary, McKinley Elementary. Even some of the changes that were made at Sherman are continuing to be made at Sherman. We're looking at Mill Hill the night we vote on this budget. We have made, and that's stuff that's not on the Board of Education side, because that's all done with bonding money. That's on the town side. So we have continually, and this board has approved this, just like the other towns' boards have approved it, continually made an investment, a continual investment, and we all plan on doing that. There's been comments in regards to our PPEs and things like that. I will say that we can compare all sorts of statistics, but I'll tell you, our kids are thriving. You look at the test scores. Our students are thriving if you look at those test scores. You can make an argument. I'm not going to be embarrassed that we have an efficient system. I'm not going to be embarrassed by that fact, that we don't have the top PPE, but yet our students score similar to people that have a lot higher PPE per pupil expenditure. We have a first-class education system, and we are providing that. And I think this board is committed to continue to do that, just like the other town bodies have. I am getting concerned on the town side in the services that we all expect to receive as just basic services. I mean, every single year, the Board of Ed side is going up about twice as high as the town side. The budget that we have before us with the first selectman cuts paving. Now, what many of you might be surprised about, because I know I was surprised about getting involved in this, was that we might budget an amount for paving. That doesn't mean that much paving is being done. Paving is a backstop number. So basically, since they wait till the spring to do the paving, we fund a certain amount and it goes to the Public Works Department. But they hold back on doing the paving last before they see what nor'easters have come in, what storms have come in. Are we over on, certain other areas? Has a hurricane hit? Whatever. So while we fund an amount for paving, if we run out of money in the Department of Public Works budget, the backstop, the safety number, is not doing paving. So it concerns me that we're even cutting that number even more, because I don't think the roads are in great shape. I have people complain to me about it, but I have a first selectman who's telling me and his department, oh, we're fine. We're fine with that. Well, I don't think I'm fine with it. It concerns me. I mean, we just had these nor'easters. I'm waiting for the numbers on those to see where we are, because I'm afraid we're not going to be doing the paving we're supposed to do for this year, and then we're going to cut it further next year. But there's only so much we can continually not properly fund town services before we all start waking up and start saying, hey, I thought my taxes paid for good roads. I thought my taxes paid for, a nice beach that's properly maintained and clean, things like that. It's starting to concern me that we are starting to cut too much from the town side to balance the budget. But we're going to have to and I will tell you, we're all drilling down on it. I'm proud of my other board members. We spend a lot of time on it. We probably ask more questions, and I probably ask more questions than they want me to ask, but, if there's a dollar to be found, I think there's a dollar to be found. But I think we gotta provide the services in a first-class education system, and I think that we can provide that in an effective and efficient manner. Thank you.
All right. I guess I'll go last. And Mr. Walsh, yes, you do ask too many questions. No. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out. This is one of the highlights of the year for me, to see the community engagement in our budget process and how well-informed many people are. With that said, there are certain clarifications based on statements made that I want to make sure everyone goes away with accurate information as opposed to kind of rumor and innuendo. Number one, the increase on the town side, first of all, I want to echo Mr. Walsh's comments. There are some areas that I'm concerned on our spending in those levels. We're not actually cutting expenses. We're kicking the can down the road. We're not paying for things now, not doing things now that will eventually need to be done. And as I indicated, although the spending side increase, the spending increase is like 1.6% on the town side, that's really offset by carrying forward funds, savings from other years, and using that against our debt service number to kind of lower that overall increase, right? And that number is between, can't remember the exact number, it's between $1.4 and $1.6 million. So there's a little bit of a misnomer there when you do that. Hey, they're only spending this much, and on the Board of Ed side, they're spending a little bit that much. That's a little bit, there's a little bit of accounting gimmickry there, for lack of a better word. To Mr. Walsh's point as well, every year, this board in particular and the town as a whole has increased spending on education. And I hate it when people get up and say, please don't cut funding for education. We've really never cut funding for education. We've always increased funding. There's been times when we've cut back on what that increase has been, but each and every year, our spending and our commitment to education continues to go up. And that's not just in the operating budget. That's also very well known. Most of our debt service relates to school building projects that have been completed and will be completed in the coming years. And we've continued to fund that and fund in infrastructure to upgrade and maintain our school facilities. Some might say not as quickly as we would like, and there's schools that are behind the times, and that's true. But when you have as many buildings as we're trying to maintain at any one time and trying to keep the investment up, and that's going to happen. And the school system does a nice job of kind of prioritizing what's coming next and then coming to us, and we actually have our discussion over how we're going to fund that. We've also, as I alluded to earlier, continued to invest year after year on our investment in school security. Not only do we do that on the hard assets, but I know for a fact that the school system has worked very closely and collaboratively with the police department and social services to identify issues and risks prior to them coming to fruition. And it's a real success story that those areas have come together and worked so collaboratively to help individuals in our society who need that help. I would like to give a plug for senior citizen tax relief. Believe it or not, that's one of the funny things that doesn't come before our board, right? There's certain things that never come before the Board of Finance. They rest in other areas, things such as contracts for employees. None of those come before us. And things such as senior citizen tax relief is the domain of the RTM. And I echo some sentiments here that it's very important that we keep seniors in town, not just from an economic standpoint, but just we talk a lot about how special Fairfield is, and part of the tapestry of the town and part of what makes it so special is the senior citizens who know the history of the town, who've built the town, who interact with our children and ourselves and provide context. And I think being a public official, you see that maybe more than most. Because believe it or not, people do watch you on Fair TV. And they'll approach you in the supermarket with your 11-year-old, much to his chagrin, and they want to tell stories of what Fairfield was like 20, 30 years ago and how important it is to invest in town assets. And that always reminds me how important it is to keep our senior citizen population in town and how important it is that we listen to them and maintain them. There was a comment made about teacher salaries and the growth. I'm not going to get into the whole thing. I'm married to a teacher. I'm the son of a teacher, the nephew of a teacher, whatever. No, they're not paid what they're worth. That's absolutely true. Somebody made the comment, though, that they were getting an 11% increase over the next 3 years. My understanding is that increase is closer to 8%. That might not make any difference whether you think that's too high or whatever, but just factually, I understand it to be closer to 8% than 11%. I just wanted to throw that out there. There was also an item stated that, hey, we were able to regain, and I don't remember who said this, but hey, we were able to regain our AAA tax rating. That's not accurate. We never lost our AAA tax rating. We did have a couple of our rating agencies express some concern about certain aspects, including our fund balance, and then, of course, our balance in our insurance fund, and that has gone away, and we've been able to get rid of the comments, but we have not lost the AAA tax rating in that regard. So those are some of the things that I just wanted to throw out there and make sure people understood so they don't walk away from this meeting with inaccurate information, at least as I understand the information. The last thing I did want to address, though, and this has been getting worse. I've been doing this now for 13 years, and it's been a pleasure to be on this board, and it's been a pleasure to be part of this process. And the good times far outweigh the bad times. But what I've noticed happening is there's a lot more rumor and innuendo out in the town's place, right? Out in the marketplace. And despite the fact that I start most of our budget meetings with a commentary that don't draw conclusions from the questions we ask, invariably people draw conclusions from the questions we ask. And there's been a lot of static on the channel recently that, oh my God, you guys are going to cut education, and oh, I hear there's $1 million cut coming, and you guys don't like that side, and you're going to do this on that side. I would think if that was all decided and true, I would probably know about it. And yet I'm constantly surprised by that. And it's stated as fact. It's stated as being, this is what the plan is, and get out there and go after them and let them know you're not happy with that, whatever your opinion is. That's not the way it works. And it's really sad that we're talking past each other at this point. And instead of dealing with facts and understanding that you've got people up here that, quite frankly, I'm very proud to be part of them. Very proud because I know they weigh all the items. And we don't always agree, and that's fine too. Reasonable people can disagree. But the fact that we're talking about that and people are stirring that pot, that's more than what goes on in Washington, and it's more than what goes on in Hartford. It's not something that I want to see emulated in Fairfield. Our numbers are listed. Our emails are listed. Now, I will have to tell you, although we read a lot of the emails, most of the emails, you can't really reply to all of them, particularly since now they have those things where you can just press a button and hit the entire BOF at one. You get thousands of emails. And that's pretty hard to talk to all of them. But reach out to us and ask us questions like that. Reach out to me and ask me if I know something. I'll give you the answer that I know. But the reality is those decisions haven't been made. We listen to all the facts. And because we question something, I'll tell you when you need to worry, when we stop questioning. Because we're your elected representative. If I'm not asking tough questions or somebody on this board isn't asking tough questions, throw us out. Because we're spending your money. So when you watch a meeting, look at that context. I want that man or woman asking that question because it's my checkbook. And when it comes to the Board of Education, remember, we get to vote on one number. We don't get to say where they spend that money. And I'll tell you, to a person on this board, our goal is to make sure that those funds are efficiently spent for the best outcome for the student. Being fiscally conservative doesn't mean being cheap. It means making sure that the funds are expended in the best way possible for the best outcome for all. That's our job. So when we ask questions and we drill down on something and we don't like the answers we get, or we ask for follow-up, don't read in that we're pro or con. Read in that we're doing our job to make sure those funds are spent as intended for the betterment of all of us. And I just hope we don't lose that perspective. And I fear that sometimes we are, because there's so many agendas out there in the general public that just aren't accurate as it relates to this board. I once again want to thank you for all your comments and for coming out today. I can speak for all of us. We are all routinely amazed by how well informed, in many instances, when they stay out of the rumor and innuendo, the townspeople are. And thank you very much for being here.